Today's lecture by Ambassador章启月is one of the series lectures by famous diplomats in Hong Kong, including diplomats from the mainland China, USA, Germany, France, Italy, Korea, Japan, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The lecture is well received by the members of the consulates, as well as local, mainland, overseas, and exchange students and teachers of the Chinese University. Now, may I invite Professor Henry Wang, Pro-Vice Chancellor of the Chinese University, to give his welcoming address. Professor Wang, please.
Ambassador Zhang, President Song, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor of the Chinese University of Hong Kong to have invited Ambassador章启月, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China in the Republic of Indonesia, to visit us and give a lecture on campus. As can be seen from the packed auditorium today, I believe many of us have been longing to come face to face with Ambassador Zhang to hear her works of wisdom. Ambassador Zhang is undoubtedly one of the most well-known senior officials in China. Not too long ago, we used to see her frequently and regularly on TV as a spokesperson of China. Standing behind the podium, facing a room packed with journalists from different corners of the world, Ambassador Zhang impressed us with her eloquence, confidence, and intelligence. In her close to 30 years of work as a Chinese diplomat, Ambassador Zhang has had a wide range of experience in international affairs and multilateral diplomacy. Ambassador Zhang inherited from her father, Zhang Shu, a former Chinese ambassador to Belgium and Japan, among other postings abroad. The aspiration to serving the country and its people as a diplomat in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and due to her family background, Ambassador Zhang was amongst the very few Chinese youngsters who were chosen to study in the United States in their teens to learn the language and the culture back in the 70s. The young, hardworking Ambassador Zhang was one of the best students in the Beijing Foreign Studies University and one of the best candidates for the United Nations program to train simultaneous interpreters in the early 80s. She was carving out her career as a professional diplomat and fulfilling her dream to follow in the footsteps of her father. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson mechanism came into being in 1983, the year Ambassador Zhang joined the ministry after her graduation from Beijing Foreign Affairs Studies University. She began her career by working for 4 years as a simultaneous interpreter for the United Nations, both at its headquarters in New York and Geneva. She took part in numerous international negotiations and consultations as member and advisor of the Chinese delegation. Between 1995 and 1998, she served as the political counselor in the permanent mission of China to the United Nations. At the end of 1998, her career took a new turn. She was appointed the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China and remained in that important post for 6 years. Ambassador Zhang immediately drew media attention when she appeared at the press conferences as spokesperson for the first time. She is the 18th and the youngest spokesperson since the ministry introduced the system of spokespersons in 1983. She is also the third lady assuming the vital role in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. From February 2005 to July 2008, she served as ambassador to Belgium. Ambassador章启月presented her credentials to His Excellency President Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, President of the Republic of Indonesia in August 2008, and became the ninth ambassador of China to Indonesia. Today, Ambassador Zhang will give a talk on China's foreign policy and China-ASEAN relations. Without further ado, may I ask you to join me in welcoming Ambassador Zhang.
Thank you, Professor Huang, for that introduction. And President Shen Zuyao and Vice President of Hua Yunshan of the university, dear professors, special guests of the university, and dear students, good afternoon. Well, first of all, let me say how happy I am to be visiting your university for the first time. I've been to Hong Kong many times, but this is really the first opportunity I have to visit and your beautiful campus. And just now, this university has given me a short tour of the campus. It's really a nice place, and I really have admirations for all of you to have the opportunity to study here. And even though that this is the first time, but your university is not unknown to me. I know that you have produced some very famous people, including the Nobel Prize laureate, who is going to visit you very soon. And also, just this morning, I read in the papers that there was another rating of universities, the best 500 universities in the world, and your university is among the best first 50 universities in the world. So congratulations. Even though I also read the statement made by your president, Mr. Shen, that we should not read too much into the school rating. Still, I think it's a very good indication and recognition of the quality and strength of your university. Well, I think many of you would probably wonder, why is the Chinese ambassador to Indonesia here in Hong Kong? Well, I wanted to explain that I'm here at the official invitation of the Hong Kong government to visit Hong Kong. Each year, Hong Kong government invites 2 to 3 ambassadors to various countries, Chinese ambassadors to various countries, to visit Hong Kong on a VIP Visit Hong Kong program. The purpose of the invitation is for the ambassadors to learn more about Hong Kong and to exchange views concerning everything, including the external relations or interactions between Hong Kong and other regions and countries, and also to explore further ways and means to better facilitate Hong Kong and better promote Hong Kong. So in my daily work, I not only promote Beijing, Shanghai, but also very much Hong Kong. So this is actually part of my job. So what I want to say is that I'm here to learn, not to teach or lecture. And I'm not prepared to give you a lecture. Well, just before coming here, the president and vice president of a university gave me a lunch. And I know that no lunch is for free. So since I was entertained so well and treated so well, I must come and contribute something. So I said again that this is not a lecture, but just would like to take this opportunity to share with you some of my experience, especially working in Jakarta, in Indonesia. I've been there working as an ambassador to Indonesia for more than 2 years. And I think this experience is really very much enlightening and enriching experience. Because for me, it's the first time working in another Asian country. Before this, I was in the United States, in Europe, many times, but first time working actually in another Asian country. And this is like a discovery for me. I find that actually, even though Southeast Asia, Indonesia, all of these members of ASEAN are close neighbors of ours. Just now, but actually we don't really know these countries so well, especially I'm talking about the general public does not really know this area so well. Just now I visited your scenic spot called Tiandi Heyi, and I asked the president of university, when we look to the other side of the sea, what sea is this? And they said it's South China Sea. Actually, Indonesia is situated on the other side. So we are close neighbors. So next time when you look to the other side, you know I'm there also. So what I wanted to say is that actually today, you know, we don't seem to know this area so well, but Southeast Asia as a whole is undergoing profound changes. And the economy is picking up. It's actually developing very fast. And the countries, especially the members of ASEAN, are working very closely together. And the potential for development is great. And I think in the coming years, we will see more and more development of this area. So I would like to, first of all, talk a little bit about Indonesia, not because I work there and live there, but because this is a very good example of Southeast Asia country and the changes that has brought about in the recent years. And also, actually, Indonesia is the largest economy, largest member among the ASEAN grouping. So I wanted only talk about Indonesia because I think this is a very good case in point. Most of us have heard a lot of things about Indonesia. We heard about the tsunami that took place in 2004. We have heard about the chaotic situation for many years. We have heard a lot about earthquakes, natural disasters. But actually, I think what we do not always realize that Indonesia is embarking on a new path of development. And actually, Indonesia is recovering from the crisis that has devastated this country in 1997 and 1998, which we call the Asian financial crisis. And ever since then, Indonesia has undergone a lot of reforms. They call it reformasi, political reform. Now they are moving toward a multi-party democracy, and also economic reform. So as a result of all these reforms, now Indonesia is in a process of social and political stability and also economic fast development. Well, actually last year, under the background of the international financial crisis, Indonesia was able to register a growth of 4.5%, which is actually number 3 among the Asian countries, right after China, India, and Indonesia was number 3 in the positive growth. And this year, for the first 6 months, the growth rate was registered at 6.2%. So it's really quite a good performance. And the prediction is that by the end of this year, it will certainly reach something around 6%, and also next year it will continue. So the actual political and social situation is quite stable. So if any of you wanted to visit Bali or in other places, you should feel very safe, I think. And also an indication of the stability is that last year Indonesia went through 2 big elections. One is the direct presidential election, and the other one is the legislative election through direct election as well. And both went very well. It's really not easy in such a country. So today, Indonesia is also not only playing an important role in United Nations, APEC, WTO, in many of the international fora, it's also a member of G20. And some people say that, as you know, that there is another grouping called the BRIC countries. So the BRIC countries include the countries of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. So some international analysts say that maybe one day, and maybe very soon, that Indonesia will become one of the BRIC countries. So instead of saying BRIC, you should expect it to say BRICS, plus one I at the end. So there seems to be a little bit more equilibrium between democracy that Indonesia is achieving and also law and order. So the general situation is quite good in that country. However, as I said at the beginning, that we don't really know this country very well. So when we are talking about economic interaction, cooperation, investment, or tourist expansion, we're still a little bit worried about this country. So I wanted to say a few words about what you should know about this country. Actually, one of the writers, international writers, wrote about Indonesia one day, saying that Indonesia is actually the best kept secret in this world. Even today, you know, not only the Westerners find it difficult to understand Indonesia, I think even the close neighbors do not really know Indonesia. So when I went to this country, I had discoveries every day. Many of you know that this is a country of many islands, but probably you do not know that this country has 17,000 islands. And the islands are not very small. The islands are huge islands. Because yesterday when I was talking about having been for China and many other countries exporting some minerals, coals from this country, someone asked me, he said, is it all from deep sea? Because they don't think that Indonesia has land mass. I said, no, it's all from land. And also, I wanted to give you figures to give you an idea how big this country is. Actually, you know, this is the largest archipelago in the world with 17,000 islands. If you take a direct flight from the east tip of this country all the way to the west and then up to the north, because this country is in that shape, you would not know, you would not guess how many hours it would take. From here to Beijing, it's only 3 hours, right? From here to Jakarta, it's only 4 hours. But from the east tip of Indonesia to all the way to the northwest tip of Indonesia, if you fly in direct, I was so shocked to know that it would take 9 hours. 9 hours. Yeah, when someone told me of this number, I couldn't believe it, and I tried to argue. But after really doing a little bit of homework, I realized it is 9 hours. This is how big this country is. And this country is actually a very large country in terms of population. It's the 4th largest populous country in the world. Recently, they just had a census conducted, so it has 237 million people. So it's really very large with also rich natural resources. And this is a country, very diversified country too. It has about 300 ethnic groups. 300 ethnic groups. Some people even say 500 because they're spread in all the islands. So each island in the old days are quite isolated. So nobody actually can say how many languages are there in Indonesia. So I get every day a different number from an official from Indonesia. Some say 500, some say 600. So I always quote the number given by the finance minister who said that Indonesia has 724 languages and dialects. That's how many, 724. And many people think that Indonesia is a Muslim country, but that is also wrong. Indonesia is not an Islamic country, but with the largest population who believe in Islam. So this is also some discovery for me. When I went to Indonesia as a woman ambassador, for the first few days, I was being very careful. So when I was asked to present my credentials to the president, I wore a Chinese qipao. And because this is a very tropical country, very hot, so I had my qipao without sleeves. And then, but I was very careful. I said, I'm just here for a few days. I don't want to make any mistake. So I put a little jacket outside of the qipao. So when I went to the palace, and we had to wait. So the protocol was another lady official came to me and said, Ambassador, this is a really nice qipao. Let me have a look, you know. So she said, oh, you should wear it without the jacket. You know, the qipao looks so nice on you. The jacket will make it, you know, like a Western suit. But I said to this lady, I said, well, because, you know, this is a Muslim country, I have to be careful. And she said, well, Ambassador, I wanted to correct you. We are not a Muslim country. This is actually, Indonesia is a very, very open society with all the religions on the equal footing. So every year, all the religious holidays are being observed by everybody. So in Indonesia today, they observe, of course, the Islam religion like Ramadan and Lebaran, you know, all these religious events. But also they all celebrate Christmas, and they also celebrate the Buddhist festival, the Hinduism festival. And because it's such a diversified country that, for example, the Chinese New Year, because there is a large Chinese community, is also a public holiday in Indonesia. And actually, I found it out when I started working in Jakarta that for the most part, Islam in Indonesia was brought into this country by Zheng He Xiaxiyang, by Zheng He from China. Zheng He himself was a Muslim. So these things are quite, you know, I think it's worth knowing. And so this is, I'm just only giving you an example to say that even though Indonesia, the Asian countries, they are very much part of our neighborhood, we really don't know enough. So second thing, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about ASEAN as an organization. Actually, the ASEAN Secretariat is located in Jakarta. Many of you probably not know. You probably know, and I'm sure you know, all of you know that Brussels is where the headquarters of EU is located. But actually, today, the ASEAN Secretariat is in Jakarta. And starting from last year, ASEAN as a regional organization has had some profound changes. Actually, ASEAN as an organization adopted a new charter called ASEAN Charter by the end of December 2008. So starting from January 2009, this organization has changed itself from a loose regional organization into actually international entity. ASEAN people say that it's rule-based and people-centered regional organization. Today, it is a legal entity that can deal with other countries and organizations. And so now all of the other the members of ASEAN would send their permanent representatives to the ASEAN Secretariat. So in a way, the Secretariat is no longer an organization to serve, but actually is moving toward a decision-making body. So it's more or less, you know, you don't have any comparisons, but it's like the EU headquarters in Brussels. In the making, I'm saying in the making, but of course it's also not the same. So the Secretariat since 2009, January, is in the process of institutional building. So right now there is one Secretary General, 4 Deputy Secretary Generals, and there is a standing decision-making body they call the CPR, Committee of permanent representatives. And the purpose of this organization, or the goal, objective of this organization, is trying to build up community and to build the regional integrity, in regionalization of this organization. So they are trying to achieve a joint community by the year 2015 with 3 pillars comprising of political, economic, and social and cultural pillars. So today it is a real organization in itself. It has a flag of the ASEAN, and in order to enhance the identity of this organization, the Secretariat and the ASEAN Secretary General organizes a flag hoisting ceremony every year in August. So not only there is a flag, there is a ceremony to raise the flag, but also there is an ASEAN anthem. I don't know how many of you have heard of the ASEAN anthem. Well, talking about the anthem, it's actually not so easy to come to this stage of an anthem. I talked to many people who were involved in the process of this community building, and they said 20 years ago, it was even difficult to talk about an ASEAN song. When they had this organization, you know, this organization was started in 1967. So as this organization evolves, people said maybe there should be a song so as to bring the ASEAN people together. But there was very strong opposition. They said there cannot be one song. You know, there are 10 members, it must be 10. So it was very, very difficult. So finally, they couldn't come to an agreement. So they said, maybe instead, if we cannot call it a song, maybe we call it a hymn. So, so later, even the hymn was not agreed on. And so finally, you see the big changes that, 2 years ago, all the composers from 10 members came together, and they had an audition and a selection process. So finally, a song was selected for the anthem of ASEAN. And the name of the song is ASEAN Way. ASEAN Way is actually the way ASEAN countries deal with the region and outside world. And one of the main sentences in the song is, "We dare to dream and care to share." I think this is a really beautiful sentence to express the feeling that ASEAN countries are working together toward developing this region. The ASEAN Secretariat and also the ASEAN members in the past years have been working very hard to build this identity, to build this community. For example, in order to do this, last year for the anniversary of ASEAN, the Secretary General organized a trip for all the permanent representatives, including the dialogue partner representatives. They chartered one plane. So in the morning, the plane took off from Jakarta, and then they had lunch in Bangkok. And then because Vietnam is this year's chair, so they ended up in Hanoi. So this was to show that within one day, they could travel to 3 to 4 cities. And also today, there is an airline. I don't know if you have heard. You must know, and you must really remember this airline, because it's called Asia Air. I think it has with the investment mainly from Malaysia. But this air company is actually flying to every capital of ASEAN members. So this is a way to connect. And of course, one of the goals of the ASEAN organization is to achieve connectivity. Connectivity is, of course, referring to physical connectivity, but also is related to many other aspects like telecommunications, financial, maybe even education, in health and quality control in all aspects. So this is very important of the community building. So actually today, this region, the Southeast Asia, is getting very important because it's one of the most dynamic regions. Its growth rate has been higher than other regions. with last year coming to a total of GDP 1.5 trillion, which accounts about 3% of the world GDP. And also the ASEAN as a whole is taking a leadership role in the development of the whole of East Asia, through such mechanisms like 10+1, which means ASEAN 10 members plus China plus Japan plus Republic of Korea, and through such mechanisms as 10+3, which means ASEAN 10 members with Japan, China, and Korea, and also with such mechanisms of EAS, the East Asia Summit, and ARF, the Asia Regional Fora. So there are many mechanisms, but I think you will be hearing more and more of these things. Actually, even for me as an ambassador, I find it difficult to keep abreast of all the developments and to know all the terms and to remember all the mechanisms. So actually, because this is such a dynamic region that all of the countries in the world and other regions pay a lot of attention to this region. Today, there are already, apart from the permanent members designated to Jakarta from the ASEAN countries, there are already 40 ambassadors accredited to ASEAN, 40 ambassadors, 10 from dialogue partners. They call it dialogue partners like China, since 2 years ago, for example, China has also named an ambassador to ASEAN. Not me, another lady. Well, she is at this moment, staying based in Beijing. So I take care of the daily work, but we already have an ambassador to ASEAN. And there are, as I said, there are 10 ambassadors from dialogue partners, and there are 30 ambassadors from non-dialogue partners. This year, last month, there was another celebration for the anniversary of ASEAN. So actually, I remember the EU representative made a statement of congratulations to ASEAN on behalf of all the dialogue partners. And then the French ambassador to Jakarta was invited to speak on behalf of all the non-dialogue partners. So the French ambassador, when he was asked to stand on the stage, he started talking about why is France not considered as a non-dialogue partner. So every paragraph of his statement, he said, I cannot understand why France is not a dialogue partner. France and ASEAN has done so much in the past, has had so much relationship, has so much cooperation, has been talking for so long. Why are we considered the non-dialogue partner? So there was, we all had good laughs over that. And then at the end of his statement, actually Dr. Suring, the Secretary General, already finished his statement, but he couldn't end the meeting without responding to the French ambassador. So he went up to the stage again and he said, well, I took note of the views expressed by the French ambassador. I think next year we will try to adjust that. Instead of dividing ambassadors into dialogue partners and non-dialogue partners, maybe we call this group the aspiring partners. Yeah, so this is just to tell you a little bit of story to make it fun. But what I wanted to say is that actually today, the ASEAN grouping is attracting more and more attention. So now I come to a relationship between China and ASEAN. Well, actually, this is, we have had a relationship since 1991. It started when our Vice Premier Qian Qi-chen attended the ASEAN ministerial meeting as an observer, only as an observer. But today, this relationship is all-encompassing and all-embracing into almost all the sectors, at least 20 sectors, including in the environment, agriculture, transportation, telecommunication, human resources, development, education, health, you name it. It's all, it's all quite, China and ASEAN are quite, deeply involved in cooperation and in taking a lot of projects together. I will give you another story, because this is afternoon, you might be a little bit tired, and if I don't tell you little stories, you doze off probably. Well, in January this year, the state councilor, Chinese state councilor Dai Bingguo, visited the secretariat of ASEAN. So I was with him. So at the entrance, Dr. Suring, the Secretary General, gave Mr. Dai a bouquet of flowers. As we went into the room, we started the meeting. Mr. Dai was giving a speech at the secretariat, with more people than this group, and also with all the ambassadors to Jakarta. Secretary General Dr. Suring explained. He said he actually talked about this bouquet of flowers. He said, you probably have not realized that, Your Excellency, Mr. Dai, that when I handed you over the bouquet of flowers, it was exactly 38 stalks of roses, pink roses. Actually, it is true that because, Councillor Dai probably was so busy looking at other people, shaking hands with the people, did not realize it was 38 and had no time to count. And he said, why did I, choose 38? Because China's relationship with ASEAN, we had a good relationship of 19 years. And flowers are actually symbols of dynamism, creativity, and admiration. So we wanted to show our, admiration, to show that there is dynamism between China and ASEAN, in the cooperation. However, being a diplomat from Thailand, that was at the time of the Bangkok, crisis. He said, I had to be very careful with the colors, not to make any mistakes. In diplomacy, sometimes these details are very representative. So he said, I could not, because roses are usually red, right? So he said, I cannot pick red. And then I cannot pick yellow. So, but I have to express my enthusiasm and warmth, so I chose deliberately pink. To show that this has been a dynamic 19 years, but we are also looking forward to another 19 years of more productive relationship and cooperation. So actually, China and ASEAN has been forging very strong relationship over the past 19 years. Next year, we're going to celebrate the 20th anniversary of relations with ASEAN. We have, as I mentioned, that had very strong cooperation, through 10+1 process. Today, China is already the largest trading partner for ASEAN, and ASEAN is number 3, the third largest trading partner for China. And in 2003, we have signed a strategic partnership for cooperation for peace and prosperity with ASEAN. And actually, why I mentioned the new developments of ASEAN-China relationship is that this year is a new milestone in the relationship between the two sides, because starting from this year, the ASEAN-China free trade area is in full implementation. This trade region, this trade agreement, the trade region has been in discussion and in implementation for about 10 years. The discussion started actually right after the Asian financial crisis, and then the proposal was first made, I think, in 2000 or 2001, and then we came to agreement with the first agreement was on commodities and goods, and then later came service. Only last year, the agreement of investment was signed. So starting from this year, this is the full implementation of the free trade region. And so actually this, you probably have not noticed that it is the largest free trade region among the developing countries. And it is really encompassing a very big market of 1.9 billion people with a total GDP of about 6 trillion. So this is really the largest, one of the largest free trade area. However, China and ASEAN relationship is not only in the economic side, but also in, as I mentioned, it cuts across many aspects. If we talk about a little bit of the general support that China gives to ASEAN, China was the first big country outside of this region to accede to the TAC, that is the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. So now, later, all the other major countries outside of this region have acceded into this treaty, but China was the first. And China has also always supported ASEAN's goal or objective of achieving a community building and supporting ASEAN to play an important and leading role in this region. Well, there are many things to talk about in this relationship, but I just wanted to maybe mention a few characteristics of this relationship. I would say that the first thing that characterizes this relationship is mutual understanding and support. In this process of forging a closer relationship, both China and ASEAN have gone through two crises. One is the Asian crisis. One is the international financial crisis that took place starting from September 2008. But I think if you look back, that in both of these events, that we have helped each other quite a lot. Talking about the Asian financial crisis, as you know, that it was a difficult time at that time also for Hong Kong, for mainland China, for all of the countries in this region. But it was full of challenges. But at that time, China resisted in the temptation of devaluating its currency, renminbi. So actually, that move has really helped all of these countries, Southeast Asian countries in particular, to achieve economic and financial stability and to achieve economic recovery. So this was a very important milestone. And another point worth making is also the reaction or the measures that are taken after the September 2008. That is after the international financial crisis broke out, that China has taken a lot of measures together with the ASEAN members. Just to give you a few examples, like China has signed agreement with several ASEAN members concerning a currency swap. With Indonesia, there was an agreement of $15 billion of currency swap. Actually, this doesn't seem to be very significant, but actually it was never really used. The money was never used. But the fact that the agreement could be signed, it was really a very strong backing against international speculation at that time, especially when these countries, they have experienced the Asian financial crisis, so they felt very much uncertain this time round. Of course, if you look at the situation today, things are okay. But at the end of 2008, it was very uncertain. So this kind of arrangement really helped. And then in 2009, at the first quarter of 2009, at that time, the prospect of recovery was still very grim. And so even for China, it's under a lot of pressure from outside, and the uncertainty is really very strong. But despite of this, China made a number of announcements, like we announced that we would set up a 10 billion fund on investment infrastructure for ASEAN members. There is also a 15 billion credit for this region, including 6.7 billion concessional loans. This is all in terms of US dollars. And also together with all the ASEAN countries, as well as Japan and the Republic of Korea, we set up and decided to expand the foreign reserve pooling of 36 into 36 billion US dollars. This is part of the Chiang Mai initiative, the multilateralization of Chiang Mai initiative. So these measures have been very, very effective. And the second characteristics I wanted to mention is probably that this relationship can be described as a cooperation and a partnership. I would say that today, this region is not being seen as any sphere of influence, but really trying very hard to establish a partnership. And I think this partnership has benefited all sides. And I will not go into details as to the volume of trade that has been on the increase, and there are many, many other indicators. So the third characteristic I wanted to mention is that this relationship has the special feature of a mutual benefit and a win-win situation. Of course, today when now when China is getting stronger, that people always think that the weaker countries are not getting all the benefits. But I think we have to remember that, for example, when we are talking about the free trade region, 10 years ago when ASEAN and China decided to work on the free trade, China was still at quite a weak position. The market was not yet so mature. The manufacturers or the agriculture sectors were still weak. So at that time, even for the Chinese leaders, they were not quite certain about the benefits that China can get from this free trade. But they felt that in order to build more trust between the two sides, in order to enhance understanding, this is something that will be inevitable. And the Chinese government was willing to take up that challenge. And actually over the past years, for most part of the past 10 years, if you look at the trade between ASEAN and China, China has been on the deficit. Even for this year, with the big expansion of trade between ASEAN and China, China is still on the deficit. But we are not making a big fuss over this. For some, of course, because the trade is so big, the volume is so big, and generally speaking, because if you look at China's trade with the West, with the US, with Europe, China is on the surplus side. So on the whole, China is having a balanced trade. For some of the other countries in ASEAN countries, if they suffer from, I don't know, maybe 10 million deficit, they will make a big fuss. I read that in Indonesia every day. But I think it's also understandable. But I think today, if you look at the situation, you realize that this is really a win-win situation. The trade and the economic expansion has helped both sides. For example, this year, when the full implementation of the ASEAN-China trade started, there was a lot of discussion in the Indonesian papers about, from now on, maybe the Indonesian industries will be hit, will be killed by the Chinese products. They call it in the papers, say, the bloody Chinese attack on Indonesia. So during the first few months for this year, I was invited to many of the FAR seminars to talk about this free trade. People actually had a lot of misunderstanding of this free trade because there was a very little, PR or I would say education about this free trade agreement. Many thought that starting from this year there will be from the tariff, the tax will be from 20% to all the way to 0%. So actually this was not the arrangement. Actually, when the leaders from both ASEAN and China discussed and made the arrangement, they were very much aware of the fact that the SAFTA, the free trade arrangement, is a process. So there has been actually a gradual process of reduction of tariff. So the impact was not so sudden. And then there are also a lot of mechanisms to redress the problems or the difficulties. I think I will not go into, but I think by now, this is already September. Actually, a lot of the discussions have cooled down in Indonesia or in many parts of these ASEAN countries, and more people have recognized that this is real good opportunity for Indonesia, even for weaker economies. I'll give you another example. Just recently, there was a delegation from Indonesian small and medium-sized enterprises to Shanghai Expo. And because the small and medium-sized enterprises in Indonesia, they are very small. They cannot compare to the Chinese SMS. The Chinese SMS are called small and medium, but they're actually huge in number. But the Indonesians are really small. So they didn't expect to come to any commercial contracts. So they said when they organized themselves, they had a pre-visit education, and they said this is a learning process. Many of them have never been to China, first time to Shanghai. So they thought they were going there to Shanghai to study and to learn. But when they went to Shanghai, the organizers organized a discussion with the Chinese SMS. 60 Chinese SMS companies appeared, and they started to talk about really contracts. And to give you one example, there was one Indonesian lady who could provide coconut charcoal. They make the charcoal out of the coconut shell, because for coconut in Indonesia, that's everywhere. It's very easy to get. So, and she did not expect the Chinese businessman who came up to her and said, how much coconut charcoal can you provide? And she said, every year, the maximum capacity is like 6,000 tons. And then the Chinese entrepreneur said, I need 2 million per year. She was really shocked. So she came home. So she wrote many articles in Jakarta Post saying, even for the SMS in Indonesia, there is big opportunity. We must organize ourselves together, to meet this request. And this actually, if they can produce 2 million tons of coconut charcoal to the Chinese customer, it means it will provide jobs for 300,000 people. Because these are the individual farmers. Some are just, ladies at home, without any work. They just burn the coconut shells into charcoal, and they make real good money. So this is just to give you an example that, these kind of commercial contracts will create jobs and really help the ordinary people, not only the big companies. And also for the free trade region, for free trade agreement, it's not only about goods, trading in goods. It's also about investment, service area. So people started to realize that this is a very good opportunity for all the countries. Not only China is benefiting, but both sides can benefit from this. The fourth characteristic I wanted to mention is responsibility and peace. I would say that today, China and the world and Asia is very closely linked, and it is ever more closely linked. I would say that every decision in the capital, in Beijing, or even in Hong Kong, or in Shenzhen, will have an impact to the world, and vice versa. So I think this is something that we have to realize, and then we, as China develops, we need a very stable and peaceful environment. And so for China, as far as China is concerned, China would like to play a very positive and responsible role in this area, in Asia and in the world. And I think this environment is really pivotal for China's continued development. And I think it is important to have this policy of peace, especially the foreign policy of peace. But at the same time, we also need a lot of creative new measures, new methods to work with the outside of the world. We have to be more sensitive to the needs of others, to be more aware of the situations in different countries. So at this aspect, we need a lot of people to actually work in this area. I feel that, actually, as far as diplomacy is concerned, the most important thing, as we were talking about free trade, is connectivity and communication. So connectivity, as I said, is not only about physical connectivity of building roads and bridges and airports, but how do you reach to the minds and hearts of the people? And I think that's where the diplomats come into play, and this where I think all of you, the young students from this university, will play a role. I feel that Hong Kong this time, I came to Hong Kong to visit. It has only been 4 days, but it had again left a very deep impression on me, because I feel that even with the international financial crisis, it seems that Hong Kong is doing very well and is getting even more dynamic every day. And so I just wanted to maybe draw your attention to the fact that today I think Hong Kong as the international city, as the hub of this region, have to be more keenly aware of the neighborhood and even a bigger neighborhood. So this region has something to do with everybody. I think when you graduate, many of you will work in this region. Many of you will work with companies from ASEAN, from this region. And if you wanted to take a vacation, you go to this region probably more often. So I wanted to mention maybe as the last word that please do not think the ambassador is such a mysterious person. Actually, everybody, I think, is an ambassador. And so I'm sure that in your future job, or even today as a student, you could very well represent China, very well represent Hong Kong. And I hope all of you will work for the interaction, a better relationship between Hong Kong and other countries and regions, and also between China and also other countries. And I mentioned a few characteristics about relationship between ASEAN and China. Actually, I think these are also the characteristics of China's today foreign policy. So I think this, by talking about ASEAN and Indonesia, this is only an example of what China is doing and what Chinese diplomacy is all about. And with these words, I'm looking forward to feeling your questions, answering your questions. It's not, as again I said, it's not been meant as a lecture, but really an exchange of views. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Zhang, for your inspiring speech. And Ambassador Zhang has agreed to take a few questions. So let's welcome Professor Wang to conduct the question and answering part.
I think first of all, I would like to invite all to give another round of applause to Ambassador Zhang for a really very... Now, as can be seen, Ambassador Zhang is very diplomatic that she's still wearing a pink, or at most deep pink jacket. Right now, for the questions, now please first raise your hand, identify yourself, and use the mic installed next to your chair. And I also would like to urge the press friends to give the opportunity to our students, staff members, and our guests. So, first question.
Thank you, distinguished ambassador. Thank you for your excellent presentation, and we are really impressed by your elegant demeanor and eloquence.
Thank you.
I just come from mainland China and graduated from Fudan University. Now I pursue my advanced study here in CHK. As you talk a lot about the China-ASEAN relationship in your talk, I want to learn more about China's relationship with Indonesia. We are offended by several anti-Chinese riots in Indonesia. So how do Indonesia view or comment on China's development and the rise of Chinese economy? And what role does Indonesia expect China to play in Southeast Asia? Thank you.
Well, I don't think we have so much time to answer the question because your question also touched upon his history, and it will probably talk too long. But to make it simple, I would say that currently the relationship is excellent. I would say it's at the best times of this relationship, and Indonesian government attaches great importance to China's development of relations with China. And as a matter of fact, this year we are with Indonesia celebrating the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Indonesia. We today, after 6 years, sometimes people tend to forget that Indonesia was one of the first countries to recognize New China 60 years ago. So in order to highlight the importance of this bilateral relationship, the two governments have designated this year as a friendship year between China and Indonesia. I think to make it simple, that what happened, in the history, I think it took place at a particularly time, especially I think under the background of Cold War. So I think that chapter is now over. Today, that it's a new international situation, and the bilateral relationship has developed very fast. And in 2005, the two sides have signed an agreement to establish a strategic partnership with Indonesia. And today, actually, China is becoming, I think very soon, the #1 trading partner for Indonesia. And our trade has developed rapidly for the past 10 years or so. It has always been about a 20% increase. So this year, we are hoping to break a new record of $40 billion US dollars. By the end of 2008, we already achieved $30 billion. So the target was the target is $50 billion by 2014, but I think we'll achieve that quite soon. So there are a lot of things we can do together. So now this bilateral relationship, once again, is not only commercial, it's also in all the aspects. So there is no major problem between the two countries. I think the biggest, I would say, the fallback or the shortcoming would probably be more understanding between the two sides, especially as I said about the general public. The impressions of each other is not so good because of the historical problems, but there are also there's a lot of little information, correct information about each other, a lot of misunderstanding. So we are doing very much to have a better communication. Yes.
Yes. Professor Lin.
Yeah, William from Institute of Space and Earth Information Science here. Yeah, I watch TV many times here, there and here. My question is, could you help us understand the so-called 10 plus 1 and 10 plus 3? Is this kind of system in the future will be open to 10 plus 4, or even like Australia and the US or Europe with these kind of the systems? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think all the regional mechanisms are in the process of rapid development. Apart from the 10 plus 1, 10 plus 3, there is also the 10 plus 6, which is it's also called the East Asia Summit. That has India and New Zealand, Australia. Of course, this year there was another new development. That is, the ASEAN has decided to include the US and Russia into the EAS, that's the East Asia Summit. So there were some discussions about 10 plus 8. So this is a kind of 10 plus 8 now. But this is why the reason is not called 10 plus 8, it's the EAS. This is the discussion of among the ASEAN countries. So what I've been saying is that actually because of the success of 10 plus 1, and also 10 plus 3, that more and more countries are looking into this region. More and more countries wanted to have a stronger relationship with ASEAN and East Asia. And more countries wanted to benefit from this region. So that's why everybody wants to join 10 plus something. So in the future, I think there are probably more 10 pluses. But as I said, that in any of the setup of this region, China's position is that we very much respect the leadership role by ASEAN. So as long as ASEAN countries feel comfortable about expansion into +8, +10, +12, I don't think there's any problem for us, because this region is very open, and all of the countries have their bilateral, trilateral relationship anyway. It's not a big problem. So I think this is one of the reasons why I raised or brought to your attention of this fast development of this region, is that I think we must pay attention to this, because it's developing very fast. If we don't follow the developments, we might lose behind. Yes.
Okay. Gentleman over there.
Thank you, Ms. Zhang. I have a question not related with economics. So I'm interested in how the actual social reputation of Chinese in modern Indonesia is, and what the China government did to help the Chinese in Indonesia and to live harmonious with the local.
You're talking about the Indonesian Chinese
Right.
community. Yes.
Right.
Well, I think there is a very strong Indonesian Chinese community. It's very large. It's very even difficult to know how large it is. But as I said, this Indonesia is a very diverse country. It has over 3,000 ethnic groups. The Chinese, Indonesian Chinese, are not the only group, and it's not the largest group. Well, these people, first of all, they are Indonesians. They are Indonesian Chinese. And so they have been living in that country as citizens of Indonesia for many years. So their assimilation is an issue for Indonesia. Today, before as I said, in the Cold War period, there were laws discriminating against the Indonesian Chinese. Today, the laws have all been changed. So they have a new citizenship law, which says that all ethnic groups are of equal status. There must be full respect for all the ethnic groups. And another new development is that toward the end of 2008, the Indonesia Congress Parliament adopted a new law, which is called the Elimination of Discrimination Against Ethnic Minority Groups. So what this law means is that if there is any discrimination against any ethnic group by any level of government, it could be punished by law. It could go through criminal, prosecution. So I would say that, as far as the constitution law is concerned, as far as the political situation is concerned, there is no discrimination. So this is a country, as I said, of so many ethnic groups. They have been living there for over thousands of years. So I think as the country develops politically and also economically, I think things are really, changing, and it is not really for us to say, but I think Indonesia has changed quite a lot, even in the social aspect.
Mr. Chin first.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for an excellent non-lecture. It's better than a lot of lectures that I've been to. I wonder if I can ask you a question about the South China Sea. You know that in 2002, China and ASEAN signed an agreement on the South China Sea. Recently, there was an ASEAN meeting in Hanoi, and the Chinese Foreign Minister, Mr. Yang, said that the dispute is not between China and ASEAN, but between China and individual members of ASEAN. Does that mean that China has changed its position? I mean, if it's not between China and ASEAN, why did China sign an agreement with ASEAN in 2002?
Well, okay, thank you for the question. I think this gives me the opportunity to clarify the issue. I think there are actually two aspects to the South China Sea issue. One is about the issue of territorial integrity and sovereignty. I think when it talks about territorial integrity and sovereignty, because there are claimant states in this region, and there is a dispute between China and some other countries. So this is an issue that must be solved through a bilateral, in a bilateral way. So with the claimant countries, with the countries that are having a dispute to the sovereignty of China. So I think that is one issue. The other issue is the concern for the security and the peace of this area. I would say that I think there is a concern that for all the countries of this region to maintain peace and stability of this region, and it is because I think this kind of concern is justified, because this is the country of this region that there have been over the years many discussions on how to really maintain a stability and peace of this region. And it is in that spirit that China has discussed the issue with these countries and members of ASEAN, not only in the context of the DOC, but also in other contexts, and have agreed to come to an agreement with the document. So I think this is the general, still the general feeling for China and also for the ASEAN countries. And I think this is the way that will continue to handle this issue. But I think for us, as I mentioned before, that peace and stability of the region is of utmost importance. We understand that as neighbors, there are inevitably problems or disputes that will come up in this region. But the best policy, the best way is through discussion and to work together to make sure that this region will be stable and peace, so everybody can, in the meantime, develop itself and achieve its objectives.
But you've been talking to ASEAN about a code of conduct, and that relates not just to peace and security in the region, it relates directly to territorial claims, doesn't it? And if you recognize ASEAN's role in reaching a code of conduct agreement, aren't you recognizing that this is not just a bilateral issue between China and certain ASEAN members?
The declaration we have come to, we have entered with ASEAN is called a Declaration on the Conduct. That is to say that we have all agreed to maintain peace and stability of this region. So it's not, any discussion concerning territory or sovereignty, but it's really a declaration or a commitment to this region to maintain peace and stability.
I just want to follow a similar question, talking about the announcement of Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State talking about that, the U.S. has special interests, in the Southeast Asia. And as you know that, U.S. has a special sort of military sort of cooperation with Vietnam. Now, that indicating to me that, there will be more sort of power conflict, in this part of the world. So how do you see that China will deal with, the U.S. and Vietnam close relationship?
Can you repeat your last sentence?
How do you see that China will deal with the special relationship between U.S. and Vietnam?
Vietnam?
That's right, yeah.
Oh. Well, first of all, let me say that I'm not working as the spokesperson of the Foreign Ministry. I'm currently the ambassador to Indonesia and also responsible partly for ASEAN-China relationship. So whatever I say is a personal view. Well, I think I just give you some general reaction. I would say that this, for this region, I think it's in the interest of all the countries to maintain East Asia, Southeast Asia, and this region as a peaceful and good, stable region. because I think everybody actually benefited from the development of this region. The development of China, development of Southeast Asia are not only benefiting the people here, but actually we are today one of the major locomotives or engines of development. So I don't think the US or any other country wanted to see conflicts, armed conflicts or problems in this region. So if you have read today's paper, you probably have seen that the two sides, China and the US, have had recent discussions on how to resume military exchanges. So I think even though that there have been some harsh words exchanged over the past weeks, I think it is in the really interest of both sides to have a normal relationship, to have a good relationship. I think when China and the US, two big countries, are talking and are exchanging views, everybody else feels safe. Actually, sometimes, they wanted to see some disputes, it's kind of fun. But at the same time, if there's really harsh words exchanged, everybody's nervous. So I think, as I said, China is a very responsible country, so we don't want it to see the nervousness for us or for anybody else. So I think it's important to have good, normal, working relationship with the US. And also our relations with Vietnam is also developing and growing. So I think that generally speaking, this region is in a good situation. We're not worried.
Okay, now because of time, now let's have the last question. Obviously, I'll give the chance to my boss.
Well, Ambassador Zhang, you obviously are very distinguished speakers and a very charismatic diplomats. I ask this question on behalf of our students here in this room who may want to follow your footsteps. And can you tell us what does it take to be trained as a diplomat and in the future perhaps stand in the podium, speak to the audience for 1 hour without looking at the script and answering all the media's questions without any hesitation. How should our students prepare to take up a career similar to yours?
I can see this is a very caring president. His question is even his question he raises on behalf of the students who have not had the chance. Well, I will disappoint you because I had no training. And when I became a spokesperson, I think I've also had, encountered many young students who said they really wanted to become the foreign ministry spokesperson. So they have asked me this question before. So, and also the same question to my ministers. So actually the answer is, if you want to become a spokesperson of the foreign ministry, you better not join the foreign ministry because the chance is very small. I never really wanted to become this, to work in this function. As a matter of fact, to tell you the truth, when the ministers, somehow, chose me as the spokesperson, I almost wanted to turn it down because I didn't really envy this job and I didn't really wanted to take it. But I think what I want to say is that I think it's actually, as I mentioned at the end of my talk, is that everybody is an ambassador and everybody is a spokesperson for China, for Hong Kong, or for your university. I think the best thing is to do whatever you are doing now, do it in the best way. And I think every day, whatever you're doing is actually part of the preparation and training. So I think actually, looking back, I think it's, well, maybe people say that I'm not, such an ambitious person, but I think it's not good to have high, ambitions, but I think it's to sometimes to be able to work well in the small way, in the everyday work. I think that is the most important. But I think it is important to know that today it's more and more needed the skills to deal with other people, to communicate with other people. This kind of skill is more important than before, because China and also I think Hong Kong are getting more open, and every day your life, your work has a lot to do with the outside of the world. So it's good to pay attention to others, to pay attention to the outside world, and do the best in your job. I think this is the best training. I don't know if I answered your question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professors Wang and Ambassador Zhang. Ambassador Zhang, please stay for a moment. And it is indeed our great honor to have invited Ambassador Zhang to our university. So we take this opportunity to show our appreciation. Let us invite Professor Joseph Song, Vice Chancellor of the Chinese University, to present souvenirs to Ambassador Zhang. It is a painting of the campus of the Chinese University by internationally acclaimed artist, director of the Art Academy in Beijing, Wang Mingming, during his stay at the university as an artist in residence. And this is another present for Ambassador. And we hope that Ambassador Zhang will remember us and come to visit us again in the future. Thank you, Ambassador Zhang.